Straits of the World, written by Edward Allen Kurtz.
Contents at a glance.
What is a strait? A strait is a narrow channel or passage of water that connects two large bodies of water and that lies between two large areas of land. For example, the Strait of Gibraltar connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Atlantic Ocean, and it is bordered by Europe to the north and Africa to the south. A strait is formed by nature, while a canal, like the Panama Canal, is usually man-made. The word strait comes from the Latin word strictus, which means to bind or draw tight. Let's learn more about straits. More about straits. While a strait is a waterway that connects two bodies of water and is bordered by land, an isthmus is the opposite. An isthmus is a narrow strip of land between two bodies of water, and it connects two large areas of land. A strait is navigable, which means that ships can sail through it. This is important for shipping routes, and wars were sometimes fought over who controlled some straits. A strait can also be a waterway through a large body of water that is not navigable because it is too shallow or contains dangerous reefs. How straits are formed. Straits can be formed in several ways. The Earth's crust is made up of huge areas of land called tectonic plates. These plates are like pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle. They move and create things like mountains and straits. They also cause things like volcanoes. The Strait of Gibraltar was formed by the movement of tectonic plates. Another way straits can be formed is when a body of water flows over top of land that has eroded or moved to a lower level. The Strait of Bosporus in Istanbul, Turkey, was formed this way. When is a canal not a canal? When it is a strait. We learned earlier that a canal is usually man-made, but sometimes a strait is given a name that includes the word canal. The Pierce Canal is an example of this. It is a strait formed by nature, not man-made. The Pierce Canal forms part of the border between Canada and the United States. It is located at the southern end of the U.S. state of Alaska and on the northwest side of Wales and Pierce Islands, which are part of the Canadian province of British Columbia. Choke points. Straits are important passageways for ships to be able to sail from one large body of water to another. There have been times in history when people have fought over the control of some straits. In a conflict, there are usually two sides or two groups of people who are fighting over something. If one side blocks or closes a strait so that ships cannot pass through it, this place is called a choke point. In the past, several straits became choke points, including the Strait of Bosporus, the Strait of Gibraltar, and the Strait of Hormuz. Famous straits. The Bering Strait. The Bering Strait lies between Chukchi Peninsula, Russia, at the easternmost point on the continent of Asia, and Cape Prince of Wales, Alaska. United States, the westernmost point on the continent of North America. The Bering Strait connects the Chukchi Sea, which is part of the Arctic Ocean, to the north, with the Bering Sea, part of the Pacific Ocean, to the south. It was named after a Russian explorer, Vitus Bering. Scientists think that there once was a land bridge here, and people crossed from Asia to North America. Famous straits. The Bosporus Strait. The Bosporus Strait is the world's narrowest strait used by international ships. It forms a boundary between the continent of Europe and the continent of Asia. It connects the Black Sea to the north with the Sea of Marmara to the south. This sea connects to the Aegean Sea, which is part of the Mediterranean Sea. The city of Istanbul, Turkey, with a population of 12 million people, lies on both sides of the Bosporus Strait. Istanbul used to be called Constantinople, so this strait is sometimes called the Strait of Constantinople. Famous straits. The Dover Strait. The Strait of Dover is the narrowest part of the English Channel, which separates England from the continent of Europe. This strait connects the English Channel with the North Sea. It is only 20 miles at its narrowest point. It is here where people swim across the English Channel as a sport. It is possible to see across the strait on a clear day. Many ships pass through the Dover Strait as they travel between the Atlantic Ocean and the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. It is the busiest international shipping route in the world. Famous straits. The Gibraltar Strait. The Strait of Gibraltar is one of the most famous straits in the world. It connects the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, and it separates the continents of Europe and Africa. It is less than 9 miles at its narrowest point, and it gets its name from the Rock of Gibraltar. On the north is Spain, and on the south is Morocco. This strait was formed by tectonic plate movement. Scientists think that the strait is getting narrower. If this continues, it will become the Isthmus of Gibraltar, and the Mediterranean Sea will be an inland sea. Famous straits. The Hormuz Strait. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf with the Arabian Sea, which is part of the Indian Ocean. It is a narrow strait that lies between Oman and the United Arab Emirates to the south and Iran to the north. Its name comes from an ancient kingdom called the Kingdom of Ormuz. The Hormuz Strait is an important waterway because it is the only passage between the Persian Gulf and the ocean, and the Persian Gulf is surrounded by countries rich in oil. Several conflicts have happened over the control of this strait. Famous straits. The Magellan Strait. The Strait of Magellan is famous because it connects the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. It lies at the extreme southern tip of the continent of South America and separates the mainland to the north from an archipelago to the south called Tierra del Fuego. The Strait of Magellan is very narrow, and because of this and winds and currents, it has always been a very dangerous strait for ships to pass through. The famous explorer Ferdinand Magellan was the first European to sail through this strait and enter the Pacific Ocean. Famous straits. The Malacca Strait. The Strait of Malacca is a narrow strait that lies between the Malay Peninsula and the island of Sumatra, a part of Indonesia. It was named after the Sultan of Malacca because he controlled this area about 600 years ago. The Strait of Malacca connects the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, so it has always been an important waterway. Hundreds of years ago, it became an important shipping route as Europeans sailed to China and other places to trade. It is still important today. Over 94,000 ships sail through it each year. Famous straits. The Messina Strait. The Strait of Messina is a narrow strait between the eastern tip of the island of Sicily and Calabria, which is the western tip of the mainland of Italy. It connects the Ionian Sea to the south with the Tyrrhenian Sea to the north. Both of these seas are part of the larger Mediterranean Sea. It is a very narrow strait. It is only 2 miles at its narrowest point. There are strong tidal currents in this strait and even a natural whirlpool. Some people think that this whirlpool was a sea monster called Charybdis in ancient Greek mythology. Interesting facts. Ferdinand Magellan discovered the Strait of Magellan in 1520. The Torres Strait separates Australia from New Guinea. Captain James Cook discovered the Cook Strait in 1770. It separates New Zealand's North Island and South Island. The Denmark Strait lies between the Iceland and Greenland, the biggest island in the world. The volcanic island of Krakatoa is found in the Sunda Strait. When this volcano erupted in 1883, it was the biggest explosion in modern history. The Golden Gate Strait connects San Francisco Bay with the Pacific Ocean. The Soya Strait separates the Japanese island of Hokkaido from the Russian island of Sakhalin. The Straits of Florida lie between the Florida Keys and Cuba. The Palk Strait separates India from Sri Lanka. The Formosa Strait is found between Taiwan and the Chinese mainland. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait separates Africa from the Arabian Peninsula on the continent of Asia. The Bass Strait lies between Australia's mainland and the island of Tasmania and was named after a British navigator called George Bass. The Bocas del Dragon, or Dragon's Mouth, is the name of the strait that separates Venezuela from the Caribbean nation of Trinidad and Tobago.